Welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, Clive and Abigail Prout.
Hey, Christy.
Hi, Christy. So the listeners have heard a little bit about you, and I'm really excited that you're coming to talk to us and in this context. But I know as we've been preparing and filling our well around it, this term that we've been using, right relationship. Let's start with your definition of it and knowing that you might have different language for it. So bring it. How are you defining right relationship?
I tend to think of right relationship as being like a commitment to returning to the seeking of alignment and connection. So it's not like a constant or a state that you arrive at, that you're going to stay at for any length of time necessarily. It's more like the commitment to return to that once you notice or are aware that it is waning or missing or needed. And then doing what it takes to nurture connection and alignment so that there's safety and trust in the relationship, whether that be between humans or with nature or with animals or with spirit.
I think for me, it suggests a kind of an ongoing journey. Like I don't think that I've ever arrived, but it's something that I'm wanting to move towards a greater sense of connection and reciprocity with other people. It started definitely with people, the people closest to me, and it's sort of, and then there are parts of myself, and then there are other non-human beings, and so the sort of the circle of other that I want to be in reciprocal, like mutually beneficial relationship with continues to grow. So I see the term right relationship as a reminder of that path.
I love in both of the definitions, like that it is a dynamic journey. And so it's not static, and also the reciprocity. That's been coming up a lot in our conversations, and I'm drawing the infinity loop with my fingers for our listeners. The reciprocity seems really, really important. And so for both of you, in your marriage, in your partnership, how do you find that, or how do you get into that dynamic dance of that infinity loop? Like, what are some of the ways it happens, the way it breaks down, the way it comes back together for you?
It's a little bit like balance, right? It's like one of the dynamics that I'm aware of. It's like, is one of our needs getting preferential? Like, is the relationship getting biased too much towards one of our sets of needs? And what needs to happen to bring some greater balance into that?
I sent Clive this, I don't know what it was, like a little message on a text the other day it said something like, the biggest gift that you can give your partner is to work on yourself. I mean, it was more flowery than that, but I think that that's been such a consistent theme in our relationship, but also in the relationship of our family, is how much can we remember that the primary relationship was with self, and how can we return to that right relationship or nurturing relationship with self so that whatever's happening with others can be clean and not a projection of what's not being addressed with ourselves.
And it, like, being both coaches and we've been doing this for like 25 years, right? There's a sort of we're habitually trained to be looking at the other. Well, how can this person, like, what are their edges? What are their, like, what healing is available for them? And we do that with each other, and it's not super helpful.
Oh, yeah.
But we, so we kind of like have to remind each other, like, you do you, I'll do me, and support our commitment to our own exploration.
That's so helpful.
It doesn't mean that we're not offering, quote unquote feedback to each other. We're not, like, it doesn't mean that we're not sharing the impact that we've had on each other. We had something come up a couple days ago where I've said, and instead of going to the place of like, wow, this is the impact that it had on me, and how is that showing me what I can't be with, I made the mistake of falling in the pothole of like, look at what you did. It was a mess. Don't you want to work on it? And that is where we have consistently and probably will continue to fall down as a relationship, is just assuming that the other person wants, like, the feedback that we want to give them and that they can improve based on our agenda. And that's something that I feel really humbled by, because it's not like I don't know that that there's something to work on for me when I'm challenged or having a hard time with something. It's just a filter that I forget. Like, it's really easy to forget. That whatever we're having a hard time with is actually first and foremost because I am having a hard time, and that's the first lens to look through. But I mean, I think that this is just to say that we struggle with it, and it's constantly available. Like, the option of looking at the self and what we struggle with is constantly available and sometimes really elusive.
Really appreciate just the vulnerability and the authenticity. I've made up, and I've told you both, that having you both with the skill sets that you have and the commitment to personal growth, right, that there would be like an ease and a flow. And just what you've just shared is like the common pitfall in relationships of the projection of like, hey, you got this going on over there. I can see it, and naming it. I do it all the time. I feel so bad. I do it so much. And I just had to unlock when Clive said, because we're trained to be looking at for people's potential and the next level. But in an intimate relationship, and that could be in a business partnership, it could be with our children, it can be with a romantic partner, it really can get in the way and move us away from right relationship. And it can get like packaged, if you will, or positioned as, but like, this is consciousness, and I'm here to help you grow and evolve. So I just had a good big unlock. So I hope our listeners who are like share similar experiences got a good nugget there.
Well, hearing you say that, Christy, I'm actually noticing some sadness in me, and I'm not quite sure what that is. But it's connected with this sense that, the projection that you talk about, it's going on all the time. We can't stop it, right? And in some sense, maybe you're projecting something onto us, right? You see something in our relationship that you're like, oh, they have it figured out in some way. And I'm like, the sadness in me is that is such a setup.
Mhm.
like not just for you, but like for anybody listening. If you look out and then you start to compare, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I must be doing it wrong, or there's something
I could be doing better.
I should be doing better. Like,
Yeah.
because we're comparing
Yeah.
ourselves with some imaginary projection that we put out there into the world. It's like, oh, that's how we create suffering.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting hazard of the profession of being a coach or therapist, where you're really looking at another person's healing and your role as healer in helping them attain that. And
Yeah.
it can really be challenging when you have two people who are identified with that role in relationship. It can be really challenging. It can be challenging for a family system. It can be challenging because it's a setup, as Clive says. And then if you stay with it long enough, I think that there are these, like, talk about like moments of right relationship or alignment. There are these moments where you're like, oh, right, that's me. That really is all me. And then the space and the containment that we hold for others can be held for ourselves, and we can hold it for each other. And that becomes a sweetness
Mm-hmm.
of a place of empathy and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And those are really beautiful moments of, coming back into alignment.
Can you share with us some of the ways that in your container, your relationship, you come back to alignment, that there's some boundaries and accountability to maintain that healthy balance or work towards it? Maybe I'll say that's better language. Work towards that healthy balance.
You use the word accountability, and I think in my experience, like, less of that is helpful, right? It's like more tenderness and just recognition of the wounding that we both carry, like all carry. I mean, the thing that happened a couple of days ago. I mean, uh, I was off for the rest of the day, and really the only thing that brought me back was a good night's sleep.
Mhm.
And I was gracious enough to just give me the space that I needed in in order to recover. I think one of the things that's really changed in the course of our relationship is that we give each other more space.
Mhm.
Used to be like I would get triggered, and my tendency would be to try to run. Well, I'd run away, like I'd leave the house. And Abigail's tendency is like to pursue me, like because she took my leaving as a sort of like a bad sign. The relationship's really messed up. Like she's got to make sure and that was really like challenging
Mhm.
a challenging dynamic to. And so now she gives me the space that I need in order to, come back to myself.
Mhm. Because there's no amount of, I mean, if we're just coming back for another person, then it's just the pleasing conditioning and the capitulating and all of the expectations and all of that conditioning that's just not at the base of healing. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, one of the things that I've really learned is, and I'm learning, is to try and stay in my lane and to try and focus on what is hard for me to be with and how to make space and create self-compassion so that I can return to the relationship with more gentleness and more acceptance. And that's not always like an immediate, I mean, sometimes it takes a whole week. Sometimes it takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it comes with really uncomfortable conversations or a lot of time alone or a lot of time journaling or talking to friends or meditating. Like sometimes it takes a while to swing around, like to come full circle.
And I think there's the recognition that process, like the discomfort, the learning, the growth, whatever, like that's what we're here for.
Mm.
Like that's the purpose of our time together, our time on this planet. It's not like we're ever like we get that work done so that we can live in the promised land, right? It's probably going to keep going. For me, it's probably going to keep going all the time that I'm alive. And our relationship is a container, like a cauldron. It's more intense than it would be like living a more isolated life. And it's richer and more, I don't know, more productive, it's just more stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That feels like a really important piece to pull out. So in this exploration of right relationship, is it today's UpLevel? Is it a way forward? Is it part of the revolution of humanity right now? It's that re-remembering of what the purpose of relationship is. And you just said it, Clive, that like that's what this is about. And because things are moving at such a rapid pace and there's an accelerated crisis after crisis, devastating crisis after crisis globally, and our nervous systems are just like in the ringer. How does one remember this like teaching of this is a classroom, this relationship is a mirror, this is an opportunity for growth and evolution versus this misnomer of like, I got to get to the result, got to get to the end, I got to power through this. I mean, I know that's a really big question, but I feel like that's why we're in this exploration overall. Yeah.
Well, it seems that we are living in perhaps the most individualistic culture that has ever existed, like the most me focused. Like it sort of puts the individual. It's all about individual rights, and the collective is deprioritized in our current culture. And so this view of relationships is some kind of an antidote or a corrective to that. It's like when we say I, like, what do we mean? Right? Typically we mean an individual rather than I being the consciousness of life. And you talk a little bit about indigenous cultures, like that awareness is something that we have lost touch with, especially as we get to a more materialistic view. And like, so all of this to me is connected with a more spiritual, I don't know, framing, mindset, sense. Like it's one thing to in a meditation to arrive at the awareness that this I or this awareness is universal. It's like it's not got anything to do with Clive. But to live our lives from that is way more challenging.
Mm-hmm. So when
maybe I've gone a little too far out there.
No, it's like it's brilliant, and I'm sitting with it, and then I had an image of where you live and the land. I've yet to be there. I hope I will be one day. But I envision you on your land and in the temple that you've created, doing your work, like with each other, with community, and that this is one way to contribute to the revolution, if you will. Like, is it your way to contribute? I mean, I make up it's your way to contribute to humanity right now in this like reconnection, this reconciliation.
Well, thank you for bringing in this temple and the practices, because when I think about, well, what are we actually doing?
Yeah.
I would say that most of the practices, whether it's shamanic journeying, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's IFS, like they're about like entering a state of consciousness which is altered and is giving us access to something that's beyond the rational, materialistic, like the mainstream consensus reality of our society. And that feels super important. And there's huge appetite for the greater sense of connectedness and meaning that can come through that. So it's right relationship with, I don't know, just energies and consciousness that's way beyond what I was raised to believe is reality.
We talk about how plant medicine how it came to you, into your marriage, and how it's informing your purpose in your work.
Well, I was raised really close to the land. I was raised by a single mother who prioritized connection with the earth and with community on this small island, and with her family, and with her spiritual connection. And so for me, plant medicine has been a part of the tools that were offered since I was younger. And the real difference came like 4 or 5 years ago, when like it was during COVID, and there was just this awareness of like, oh, we're not in the kind of relationships that we were in before COVID. Like something's changed, and what is this an opportunity for? And it felt like the consciousness that was trying to be shared was being shared in a non-physical way. We were being kind of called into a bigger conversation that could take place in a non-locale experience. And so, yeah, I think there was a moment that I kind of had put plant medicine in a box in my mind of like, oh, that was kind of more college and recreational. And, I couldn't really open my mind to a different relationship with it. And it was actually Clive that brought it back in a more therapeutic community-based way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was, I heard about Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. And I just thought, well, that's the profession I'm in, right? Changing minds. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So after a few recommendations, I read the book, and then I was, I just went down the same path that he did. There's a certain amount of research you can do, and then you've got to try it. And so I went looking for guided, facilitated experience. And I actually found an ayahuasca practitioner. I was looking for a mushroom guide, and I found an ayahuasca guy, and with a great recommendation. So I dove in there, and I mean, I think it might have been the very first time. It was local. It's like in Washington State. I didn't go to the Amazon for it, but I came away from one of the early retreats, and I was, most of life is plants.
Mm-hmm.
And I went backpacking for a several day backpacking trip, and sort of on the back end of this ceremony, and it was a great way to integrate. But I realized I was relating to the wilderness. I mean, we live in this incredible place. There's a national park, the North Cascades National Park. There's a section of the PCT. It's incredibly beautiful mountains. And every time I used to go, I would be looking for animals. Like, if I didn't see any animals, I was like, well, I didn't see any life. And around me, there's this incredible plant life. The trees and flowers, just amazing flowers. And so I came back with a camera roll of just incredible beauty of the plants that I hadn't even really seen before. And so that was the most stunning kind of reframing of, it's plant medicine is largely like part of what it's doing is it's helping me understand how peripheral we are to the ecosystem, right? We're tiny. I mean, people have got a little bit out of hand here, but even mammals, it's like 1%, less than 1% of the biomass is all mammals, right? It's mainly plants and bacteria and fungi, and that's all doing its stuff. It's all part of an intelligent system that we have.
Yeah, that we get to be a part of. I think, again, like, part of this disconnection and
Yes.
the divisiveness and just the stress that people are under, that humanity is under, is this disconnection to what you just beautifully described.
Yeah.
Because nature is accessible and available to all of us, no matter what context, right, or social construct we're operating from. But there's a remembering that needs to happen, and plant medicine isn't just going into the Amazon and sitting with a shaman and taking ayahuasca. It could just be going and sitting in the forest or looking at the flower, the plant that you're growing and nurturing. Like, this could be a way to restore some right relationship in oneself or one's ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, like our good friend Irene, she's got this she's a great teacher for me about relationship with plants particularly. And so she's like, try some dandelion. And so that's not just, here's some dandelion essence. It's like, okay, go out and dig up some dandelions and be sure to ask for permission before you harvest it. And then, well, how can you help the dandelions? Like, how can you be in reciprocal relation with the dandelions? Well, that's the whole thing for me. Dandelions are, like, the way I brought up, is a weed. You do not want dandelions in your lawn, and you dig them up. But they, like, in order for me to use their medicine, I need to be thinking about, well, how's it good for them too? That's totally revolutionary thinking from what I grew up with.
And there's a way to, so like to go back a little bit. So after that initial experience with ayahuasca, Clive kind of committed to a relationship with expanding his consciousness through plant medicine. And it wasn't just ayahuasca. It was just kind of like, well, this is really expanding my experience of connection with life force energy. And I want, kind of like that energy as a coach or a leader, you're leaning into the curiosity of what's opening because it's expanding and creating more resonance with you and life. And so I watched as he continued to go deeper and become more connected with more versions of life, whether it was, plants or people or animals or, previous versions of your own story or your ancestors. There was like an awakening of much broader and deeper consciousness. And for me, it was very heartening to watch him come alive to himself and get more interested in his experience as a being that was holding this life energy in concert with all these other forms, because that's how I was raised. And so it was really like a welcoming, it felt like he was waking up and then you were kind of inspired to build this yurt. We have this beautiful piece of property and it was just it was one of those true inspirations where it was like, okay, it's COVID, let's do this. And so built this beautiful 30-foot yurt, and it's been a dedicated temple to expanding consciousness and experiencing the joy of being a part of this life at this time. And like I offer a weekly dancing kind of movement for some women, and I also lead a choir over there. And so it has, we do shamanic journeying, we do plant medicine, we do meditation, we do breath work. We sometimes we just go over there and sit in front of the fire and talk. And it's just a place that is a dedicated, it's like having a meditation room in your house, but it's in the woods and it doesn't have any electricity. And so it's very elemental. And so it's got a purity to it.
Yeah.
And a consistency to it that is really committed to expanding our identification of I. Like, okay, I'm Abigail, this is Clive, but we're so much bigger than that. And the more that we can experience ourselves in that wider, more empowered spiritual state, the more that we can support others and the more that we can support the earth and be advocates for this planet that is just so beautiful and needs a voice.
Yeah, so thinking back to that, like how we got there, there was a place in the ayahuasca, like I went, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 times for 3-day ceremonies. And on one of those ceremonies, I had a really life-altering experience with the spirit of Merlin. So so Merlin is the archetypal wizard in the culture that I grew up in. And I had this experience where I heard this voice saying, "I'm Merlin," inside me. And it was, it really had a feeling of it has a strong agenda. It wants something, it wants to use this person, use Clive for its purpose. And it stayed with me for like strongly for weeks, and and it was part of that part of the message there was that my culture, the culture that I come from, British culture, you can trace back to an indigenous shamanistic, the sort of the druid culture. There's a continuous line back, and part of what is missing in the American culture is that sense of continuity. Like, so we think of indigenous people as a completely different people than us. Like, oh, those are the people that were here before we came, or those are the people that live in the Amazon, or something like that. But actually, we are all indigenous, and what's different is we have become, indoctrinated with a culture, and that was the culture that I grew up in. It was super strong. Like, the name Clive comes from Clive of India, right? Probably the most egregious colonizer the British Empire knew. He left England at 18 and came back the richest man in Europe because he manipulated the Indian subcontinent to enrich himself, right? It's like, and that, like, some people saw him as a hero, right? That's how you want your kids to be. Presumably my parents did, because they named me after him. So that's the kind of, like, conditioning
that
I needed some really strong medicine to help undo, because it was, I went to an all boys, like what they called in England a public school. It's like I don't know, it's a whole world of training the instruments of empire. That's the education system that I was a part of.
Yeah.
And super different from the way that Ab grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we couldn't have come from more polar places. Like, I was raised in teepees and, cabins without electricity or running water, and school buses, and like going to rainbow gatherings. And I mean, my mom was truly a hippie, and she identified as a back to the lander who, like, committed herself to right relationship, where she used some of her inheritance from her father to build a home that she created and designed. And, every tree that came down on our property was, meditated with and asked permission. And, I would come home from school and, take the bark off and help raise the house. And I was raised in an environment that everything was pointed towards right relationship with earth and spirit. And I made up, in part because of the small island that I was a part of, and also just the protective nature of my mom. There was this kind of assumption that no one could really understand me, and that all of the magic that I experienced and knew about was a secret. And it was an isolating secret. And so when Clive kind of came into his, like, permission to be a magical, like, being through the relationship,
Merlin.
Yeah. And through relationship with others who were also awakening, I had a lot of judgment of, like, oh my gosh, like, there was a part of me that was like, I mean, I'm just being really honest. I was kind of like eye rolly and kind of like, oh my God, like, what a bunch of latecomers, kind of energy.
Yeah.
But then there was this other part of me that was so joyous in being invited into a more socially acceptable conversation about it, because I had been so isolated in my experience for so long. Like, I've been working with my spirit guides since I was as a teenager.
Yeah.
And you know,
Hmm.
like there's so much that I do that I've just kept in the closet about. And so having Clive kind of have this kind of like, I don't even know, like celebration of like, hey, we're doing this now. And I was, after I got over the judgment of it, there was just so much joy and sharing. Like I finally feel like I can really share what I know. And
Wow.
it makes me nervous, but I mean, I'm still, but I also, like I've been part of a shamanic journey group for 15 years. And like I started studying, actual shamanic journeying when I was in college. Like there's so much about attunement and like spiritual attunement and attunement with nature and attunement with broader, bigger movements that are celestial, and both the interpersonal and the intrapersonal connective tissues that awaken and support and nurture our consciousness at this time. I feel like we're finally in a place where not only are we having these conversations with each other in a very equal, supportive and really kind of colleague energy, we're bringing different things to the table. Clive's deeply studying internal family systems right now, IFS, and that's bringing a different lens to the table. And I'm looking at a lot of movement practices and singing practices and a lot of like how to help people get in touch with their personal guardians and their connectivity with their ancestors and connectivity with their spiritual allies. And honestly, I could not have been more surprised that Clive was the one who kind of like helped me get out of my closet.
Wow.
Well, that's really, I want to go back a little bit to like after the year was finished, because I took this psychedelic coaching program that involved a retreat in Costa Rica. And so maybe 30 of us went down there together.
I was not in this program, by the way.
She's not in this program. And I met a fantastic group of people, and I invited like a dozen or so to come up to Lopez and, create a retreat together, because we thought we might be able to do better than the thing we'd experienced in Costa Rica. So bringing those people here and then having Abigail join, that was, I don't know, something really incredible that happened there. Because Abigail went from, I'm not sure about these people, like what bunch of crazies is Clive inviting, to the sort of the natural center of this group over the course of like 2 days. And I was like, whoa. And there's something super important about the community aspect of what plant medicine has opened up for us. It's not just that our relationship includes more of who we each are. It's also that we have a really strong community that is growing and exploring together. Like we're having, we'll have a call with them tonight. And it's really the first time I have felt, oh, this is our community. Like up until then, I felt like I'm sort of tagging along into the community that's already existing, whether that's the local community here on Lopez or the CTI community. But this feels different. It feels like, okay, well, somehow we are we've created this. We've created it in response to a calling that came through the plants.
Yeah.
The shape of these yurt, they look like mushrooms.
Yeah.
And they're all over the place. They're just popping up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of a flowering of this underground network of relationship.
And there you go. There's the reciprocal piece. And this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you about the plant medicine piece, because it can be such a great teacher for right relationship, whatever language people want to use in relation to aligned relationship. And the plants form in a way so organically, authentically, and create reciprocity across the ecosystem. That this is like the image I want for humanity. I want for humanity is this, like, it's possible. And what you two are doing as individuals, as two married people within your community and beyond, is a beautiful example of that. I wanted people to hear that, that it's accessible, it's possible, and we can. My high hope is to start taking out any of the misconceptions of what plant medicine is or what the process is, but really that it is a tool for this moment in time that is maybe mandatory. And again, it doesn't have to be like the big thing that, has been blown out of proportion in pop culture, but just reconnecting to the plants as a way to heal oneself or regulate oneself. Even if we don't want to go towards healing in this moment, can we start with regulation? Because the collective nervous system is in such need of that.
Yes. Well, it certainly, it turns down the ego temporarily, right? So
yes,
that allows us to experience a more connected sense of ourselves. And I also want to kind of put in a note of caution.
Yeah.
The set and setting is super important.
Super.
And so having community that you can do this with. It just makes a huge difference. Like, what is the intention? What is the understanding? What is the container? And we, I'm assuming that a lot of your listeners coming from the coactive world, I don't know if that's true, but there's something that we have learned about a container, about holding space in our coactive journeys, that is very relevant here. And that is we even if we're relatively new to plant medicine, I think we can help. We can be of service in this domain because of the holding skills that we have.
Definitely.
Well, so much of it has to do with the intention that you go into it with, and having other people who are trusted in a setting that's calm and peaceful and supportive really hold the intention so that you can do your own personal healing work that will really help the broader connective relationship of your family, of your communities, of your work. Like there's, and again, plant medicine is not everyone's ready for that level of mystery and that level of stepping into the unknown. But there's so many other ways. There's so many ways to connect with the intelligence of right relationship, whether that be through breath work or, a really free-form, directed way of creative writing or movement, dance, or singing, or, working with nature. It's all about attunement and your intention and the right container that you're seeking out. So
that's important.
I don't want to over-index on plant medicine, although ultimately it is a very efficient way to awaken to right relationship very quickly, but other ways are also very productive.
We're going to bring our conversation to close for now. There'll have to be a part 2 because we're just scratching the surface, and I can't believe how many minutes have gone by. How can people find you if they want to explore working with you? And then I have a final question to bring us to completion. And all of this will all be in the show. It will be in the show notes, but just anything you want to say about how folks can find you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can find me and us through my website, which isn't really explicit around plant medicine, but it is very expansive. And so they can find me and us through my website. That's probably the best place.
What's it called?
Great.
It's Abigail Prout.
Oh, there we go.
.com. That's the one that is up into the world. But there's a lot of things that we're doing that if you're curious about our work and our relationship and what we stand for in the world, you can definitely find us and find out what we're up to. Yeah.
Through that website.
Through that
website. And that will be in the show notes. And okay, so this has been so rich. Thank you so much. And again, there's such depth and space and pace to having conversations with the two of you that I so appreciate. I'm garnering so much around right relationship. One of my big takeaways is around in partnership, do our own work, like the reminder of you do you, I do me, and taking responsibility for that. Specifically for folks who are in a healing profession, who have the ability to point out where other people need the support. That was like that really rung true. And then there's an importance of really building sacred space. And not everyone obviously has the advantage to build, a yurt or a temple, but can you in your home find a little dedicated space that could be a place to meditate, to tune in to whatever that bigger thing is for you that helps you reconnect to right relationship? Community, finding community, and it can be with the natural world, can be community. And then if you're going to go deeper in exploration of that natural world, who are the human beings that can bring safety, security, just reverence and intention to an experience. So, and there's a lot more, but that's where I am in this moment. And if there's a final word or two from each of you about, I would say about your prayer for humanity in this moment around right relationship and how we've been exploring it.
That's really interesting. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you holding space, and I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. That last question about my prayer, so this is a whole different thing. It's like my prayer is that we lose our fear of death, that we let that go. And so there's something around right relationship with death that we did not even touch on.
We gotta have a part 2. That is so important because that I feel is driving humanity so intensely right now and has been always, but the past 5 years. Whew.
Oh, it's yeah.
Whew.
And I would bookend that with the other end of the relationship. And my prayer for humanity is not to be afraid of life.
Yeah.
Like truly loving and enjoying this experience of being alive in these bodies, in these relationships, in the privilege of being part of this ecosystem at this time. It is such an honor. And if we can really enjoy it, it will bring in more and more consciousness, which will give us more right relationship to how to support and nurture our experience as humans in this time.
Thank you, Ab. Those are, drop the mic. Brilliant words to end on. Like joy. We've heard this said in different contexts, like joy. Joy is part of the revolution, right? Experiencing joy, experiencing rest, experiencing like play. These are all so important right now. It can be easy to make up that, well, there's so much suffering. How can one have those experiences? But I hear your call. So listeners, hearing the call from Ab and Clive, like, let's live, let's be alive, let's be in the enjoyment of it. Thank you so much for coming and sharing so much incredible wisdom in your hearts. And I look forward to part 2.
Thank you, Christy.